Welcome to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Here's your hosts, Matt Cook and Bobby Brown. Welcome back, everybody, to Season 2 now of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. You might see a familiar face here in Mr. Bobby Brown. He is going to be our new co-host for Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast moving forward. So welcome, Mr. Bobby Brown, in your new spot as the co-host of Pull Hook Golf. Congratulations, my friend, and welcome onto the show. And obviously, we'll be seeing a lot of you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I'm moving up in the world 57 years later. I'm your classic late bloomer.
There you
I'm
go.
Your classic late bloomer. So super excited for the invitation and that kind of stuff. And I'm looking forward to every week. We're gonna have some great guests on that tell some great stories and that kind of stuff, and kind of pick it up where we left off, earlier when I was doing my few episodes and that kind of stuff. So I've already reached out to some guys, and people are going to be happy. People are going to be super happy on who we bring on and what we have to talk about and that kind of stuff. And plenty of diseased golfers out there that want to know the inside scoop of what's really said in between the ropes, right?
Absolutely.
Not the stuff that you got to say. So
you got it. And just for those, Mikey Perez, he's going to be focusing in on golf. So we wish him all of the best. Nothing but the best to Mikey. Still a good friend of mine and a friend of Bobby's. So we just want to make sure we give a quick little shout out to Mikey and everything that he's moving forward. And I know he's focusing in big time on golf right now. So hats off to you. But now we got to dive into our U.S. Open recap here. I mean, what an event. I mean, Bobby, you were there.
Let's start off by saying this. Did I nail that winning score?
You
at
did.
5 or 6 under. I was off on the playoff, but I nailed that winning score. It's so
you
funny.
got -6. You said -6 on the podcast. You absolutely nailed it.
I absolutely nailed it. It got really, it's so funny. We went off at 7:07 on Thursday, and from the moment I stepped on that first green, you can just feel it. Even wearing tennis shoes, you're like, man, this thing. They did not water these last night. They changed. They changed overnight, so you knew it was up for it. And I told you I had a couple friendly wagers with a couple genius caddies of mine who said that 6 or 7 over was going to be the low score on the first day, and nobody really. Happen. It's funny. We got off to, man, we missed the cut. Obviously, we missed the cut, and you never like doing that. And man, we were on our heels early. We were 6 over through 7. First tee shot of the day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, hey man, it's no big deal. You just take it in stride, especially in that format. You can, it sucks. There's no other way around it. It sucks because, when you're that many over and there's just not that many birdie opportunities. But I will tell you, he pulled his first drive in between the bunkers and the high fescue, right off the bat. And it's so funny, all my years at Caddy, and I watch European Tour players play out of that, because you see it over at going to the British Open, and we're going to be playing the Scottish Open here in a few weeks. Troy is, and I watch the European guys. The funny thing about that fescue is it sits good in the bottom and it comes out fast, but it's so long and it's so wispy that they're worried about it getting wrapped around the hosel or coming through. They can't pick it straight up and get real steep on it. So we hit one in the shit right off the bat, gouged it out to 85 yards, which was fine on an accessible pin. And then he just past the crosswalk. Those crosswalks all week get harder and firmer and firmer. And there's white lines that you get relief. But if you're just a little short of them or a little past them, there's still a lot of footprints. It's not like anybody's policing the people walking through. So, and then he kind of got a super tight line. He dumped it in the bunker, and then we're walking off the green the first green 2 over. You just want to make par, right? And then we make a bogey on the next hole, and then, geez, man,
compounded, huh?
Yeah, and it just compounded. But you just hang in there, and then we got to number 6, and I think we were 4 over on number 6. He started to get his shot pattern back, and like I told you, the last 3 or 4 weeks he's been making a bunch of cuts and kind of midfield, but it wasn't the Troy Merritt that I saw earlier in the year that was in contention 3 or 4 different times. Something was just, I'll get into it a little bit later about his coach, but something was a hair off. And then we got to 6, this par 3, and it's like, it's a good par 3. It's hard, and you got to miss left. You can't miss right. It's a back right pin. There's a bunch of moguls over there, and he flared one right, got in between these moguls. And it's so funny. You know, you hear the boom mics and you hear people, the caddies and players talking and their conversations on shots. I was thinking to myself, it's a shame that they don't have a little boom mic attached to a caddy when three of us caddies are standing on the side of the green and we're like, not really talking shit, but we're like, did he really fucking hit it right there? I mean, is it that hard to keep it left of this flag? Or just the little comments, or you know, are you you know, F-bombs, and are you kidding me? What's he thinking? Blah blah. So I had one of those moments where, you know, he got his feet under him, he's 4 over, and he hits it in this spot. And I remember walking off that tee, and I did, you know, sorry Troy, but I did think to myself, and I'm like, God, can you just keep it fucking left of this flag? Nothing bad's gonna happen left, especially in that scenario. So, anyways, we make double there. We go to the 7th tee, we're 6 over, and he starts rallying up a little bit. He makes a birdie, he gets to 5 over. He makes another birdie. He gets to 4 over. And at the start of the day, and I'm watching the leaderboards, and I know we go off early, but there's two sides, you know, and I'm seeing guys are 1 or 2 under, typical US Open. Maybe a couple guys got to 3 right off the bat, might have teed off the backside. And I was thinking to myself, with like 4 or 5 holes to go, I'm like, man, if we finish at 3 or 4 over, we're good, right? Because historically, my guy is for whatever reason, he plays his great, best golf on Fridays. So we made another kind of sloppy bogey, and we finished the day at 5 over. And I'm watching the scores. I went home and watched the telecast. Well, actually, I should back up a little bit, because his coach is there, Steve Dalby, who's from, you know, who worked with Mikey before in the past. And he is a very, how do I say, reminds me a little bit about Butch Harmon. He doesn't say a lot about anything unless something's off. And I was sitting there with him and his agent, and I told him, I go, man, something's off. You know what I mean? Something's a little bit off. And he goes, yeah, I noticed something's a little bit off. So he started pulling up some videos of previous tournaments that Troy's been in and that kind of stuff, where he's been in contention in the mix. And it looked like he's a little hunchy over the ball, his posture. He showed me a couple of videos, and I'm like, oh my God, look at that posture. That is like something you would read in a book. So he's like, I'm going to send these videos to Troy. And Troy's very quiet about that kind of stuff. You know, he's kept his card for 10 years, pretty solid player out there. So he's like, either I'm going to get blocked or it's going to resonate. So, you know, we finished that day. I went home, you know, scores, nobody was going crazy. And the great thing about my job, Matt, is every day's a new day, or every hole's a new hole, right? You just never give up. I've worked for guys that would have lost their shit. I'm good friends with Grayson Murray, but you see, he got pushed
Lord.
to the and he got pushed to the edge. And Grayson runs hot, and he wears his emotions on his sleeve. But I will say one thing about Grayson: he's a freak talent. You know, he has a hard time dealing with awkward situations and that kind of stuff. But he's, you know, I know a Grayson Murray that nobody else does. You know, I know the Grayson Murray that when he won a tournament and somebody linked up on Twitter, you know, that needed a new car and that kind of stuff, Grayson Murray bought these people new cars. So I was proud of Grayson Murray that when he chucked that club, that he didn't make his caddy, Daryl.
Yeah, get it.
Yeah. We call it the bitch slap walk of shame, right? When you got to truck up there fucking 75 yards and pick up after this guy and that kind of stuff. So at least he owned it. So, you know, we swung into Friday and late tee time. And it was pumping, bro. The wind was pumping. You knew it was going to be hard. You knew that even par was going to be good. And the big picture for a caddy and player, and I'm like, well, actually, we just played 13 holes in the U.S. Open at 1 under, right? So that's something to build on swinging into the next day. And I'm watching him warm up, and I'm like, oh, my God. He has got something resonated, maybe with those videos, or he's just feeling good, but he just had the most epic warm-up session I've ever seen. And we teed off on 10, and 10 is a par 4 that's actually like a par 5, right? If you just hit the green, it's phenomenal. So we made a quick bogey there, which was no big deal. And then we got to 11, that little downhill par 3 that's so cool. And you know, you couldn't be long on that back right flag. And we kind of Sammy safety one to 30 feet, and he buries it, right? So now we're 4 over, and then we get to 12, which is another beast, and he stuffs it to like 8 feet, right? And he buries it. So now we're 3 over, right? And I'm like, I remember thinking to myself, walking off that green, I go, not only is this guy going to make the cut, but he's going to play himself right back into this golf tournament. Hits it down the middle on 13, stuffs it to like 6 feet, pin high, little left to right. And like I told you, he's the best putter I've ever worked for. But this is one time I'm watching where he's lining up where his putter is. And I'm thinking to myself, man, he's playing a lot of break on this short putt, you know, kiss of death, right? And it hangs out and catches the left edge. But a nice solid par. 14's that great par 5 where you drive it and then you got to hit it 10 stories up, you know, and the ball just doesn't, it was cold. The ball wasn't carrying, you know, it was probably a perfect 4-iron to lay up. 2-iron's not going to get up in the air very much. So he's like, let's just put, it was a front right pin. Let's push a 3-wood up there. And, you know, 2022, the closer you are to the hole, the better chance something good's going to happen. So we push a 3-wood up there. It's a good shot. He doesn't have a shot at the flag from 55 yards, but he's this little nipper off the hard pan fairways to about 12 feet pin high, catches another edge. And I think at one point after 10, he hit 12 or 13 greens in a row. And I remember thinking to myself, and I'm like, Troy, the one thing that always bails Troy Merritt out is that flat stick, right? And I'm like, well, something's got to go sooner or later. It certainly has to. And we just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and we gave one back. And so we had that rain that was projected, that like kind of some raindrops came in early in the round, and it got super duper cold and super windy. Well, we got lucky. That kind of blew out. But when that blew out, the wind stopped, right? So this cut, I would have bet 100 pennies.
5 or 6 over, right?
Well, I never really thought it was going to go to 5. I will say I was talking to some caddies in the morning before we you know, when the weather looked like it was going to come in and was just going to get nasty. We were thinking to ourselves, okay, it's going to be 4 for sure, and it's got a better chance of going to 5 with the pressure and everything if the conditions kick up than it would be to 3. But it was starting to become apparent that it was probably going to hang at 3. And you know, the USGA does the old school leaderboards where they, you know, like Augusta, where they put the numbers in manually and that kind of stuff. And our regular PGA Tour leaderboards are all digitally, you know, and they show you what the cut is and what it's trending to. Yes, exactly. And they just put up signs of projected cuts 4 over. So we got to 8, which was our second to last hole, and we were 5 over. And if you drive one in the fairway there, you're going to have iron into the middle of the green. So you almost think, okay, I drive this in the fairway, that's going to duck birdie. And that's after all these putts didn't go, and he was putting on a clinic. And I will say this, he had been missing, he's got this little kind of shavy iron draw shot to hit at left pins. They can get at left pins. And he was curving his ball. He was just in complete command control of his golf ball. And it was so fun to watch. But we got to 8, and he hit a little flare. You know, 8 and 10 share the same tee box. So they moved 8 tee up like 30 yards from the back so you could get through on the right real quick. And it kind of hit a little bit of a flare, but not bad. And it flew into that deep stuff, the fescue. And, you know, at that point, he's got like a 4-iron out. And he's like, man, I don't know. And I'm like, hey, there's more than one way to skin a cat, you know, and he always makes good decisions. So he just took out a wedge, and we're just trying to get it down there to lob wedge range, you know, and it just came out, I mean, literally sideways left into the next rough. We had a horrible lie. Make a long story short, game over. We make bogey on the easiest hole, and we go to 6 over. Yeah, I know. And then 9 is like, you know, 9's the famous Teddy Scott drop the ball hole that we're all familiar with. And, you know, we hit it, roasted a 2-iron down there, 7-iron to like 25 feet, made par, and got out of there. But at that point, you know, it's sneaky. But caddies with those kind of boards, if you watch real close caddies, and we do it all the time, is you'll pull your phone out and pretend like you're looking at the yardage book late on a Friday, but you're actually tracking the cut line is what you're doing. You're looking to see, what do we need to do, you know, because your player's probably aware with the conditions of what's happening, but we need to know exactly, because it dictates strategy quite a bit.
I mean, you're kind of going, you know,
should we
rifle at that point?
You know, because we got to 7, and 7 was usually a, you know, anywhere from a hybrid to a 2 or a 3 or a 4-iron, but not. Troy was controlling his golf ball. It didn't take me years to figure out when guys are controlling their golf ball, you just cut them loose. And if they say they want to hit driver and they're driving it great, they hit driver. So he hit a little driver up there, you know, in the left rough, and just, you know, we got to 9, and we knew it was over. And I was bummed, and he was bummed. But it doesn't take you but about 30 seconds after that finish, that, you know, you think, well, it's certainly not the end of the world. And I was super fired up to get here to Hartford, which is a, you know, any style of player. A bomber doesn't overpower this golf course. It's another mixed bag track, you know. And I was like, man, we were in the locker room packing up and everything like that. And he's like, man, I played really good today. And I'm like, man, you played as good as I've seen you play. And it's a shame, you know, that we didn't advance. But I can't tell you how excited I am for us to get to Hartford, because you are controlling your golf ball and everything's going to be good. And Troy Merritt's a pleasure to work for. And he's like, hey, man, I'm going to miss 6 or 7 cuts every single year. It just sucks that it happened in a major. And, you know, it's a $17.5 million purse. You don't really think about the money until Sunday night when you go to ESPN.com and you drop down and you're like, Jesus Christ, 40th paid fucking 80 grand. You know, that was a home run back in the day. So
how does the pay happen, by the way? Is that just wired into an account for you?
Yeah, I think it is. I found out from Troy, I always thought they woke up Monday morning and they hit the lottery and it was in their account, but I think it takes a couple of days to process, and his wife handles all the business and that kind of stuff. And they usually, you know, some guys still write checks, or the old school guys still write checks and that kind of stuff, but it's big business now. So you know, it gets wired into your account. Or I think Troy's wife enjoys doing that. So I think we both bank at the same bank. So I think she actually enjoys going in on a Monday or a Wednesday. The Monday, you know, I will get my funds for the Monday of the tournament already. You know, they pay really super quick. And, you know, and then I think she just enjoys going into the bank and stuff like that and making the deposits and that kind of stuff. It was Juneteenth day. So I got a text message from there, like, there's not going to be any deposit. And I'm like, yes, I'm
Federal
well
holiday.
aware.
No.
Yep. It's a big day. It's a big day in America. The day slavery ended, which was huge for us. So, you know, I respect that holiday a lot. I really didn't even know it existed for a while, you know, until
I didn't either.
You know, and then so it was great. But what a fabulous tournament, man! How exciting!
It really was.
Exciting what that was.
It was unreal. I mean, to sit there and watch. I mean, it was a 3-man race, right? Where you had Scottie, Scheffler. And it kind of looked like Scottie was going to
run away with it there for a second.
And then all of a sudden, I mean, how do you go from that hot early? I mean, I've had plenty of golf rounds where I've done this, so I know. But like the best players in the world, when you get going, like it's hard to get you off the ball or make you stumble a little bit. But it seemed like there were some holes in the middle to later part of the rounds that he struggled with. That he did not fit his eye, and just he didn't play those well. Didn't play him well on Saturday. Didn't play him well on Sunday. And then you got Will Zalatoris, who had that confidence coming in from the PGA, and then all of a sudden it looked like he was going to run away with it.
Yep, and Fitz was just hanging there the whole time, right? Hanging.
He had to lead here and there.
Back and forth. Yeah, but I was watching. You know, obviously, when you miss the cut, this is the one. And you know, golf is my wife hates it. Golf is on in my house 24/7. It doesn't matter the tour. It doesn't matter the gender. I am wanting to watch at all times because I'm connected. You know, you're rooting for some guys, and honestly, you're rooting against some guys too that you don't like or that might be close to you in the FedEx and that kind of stuff. It gets a little ruthless this time of year, but I never, you know, Saturday I watched it. I don't think I missed a minute of the coverage, but Scottie can make the game look really easy. I was chuckling a little bit, you know, because him and Teddy have a really loosey-goosey attitude out there. And that's all great when things aren't going good. But, you know, I'm chuckling because the announcers are like, oh, he's so level-headed and that kind of stuff. But I've been prepared with Scottie before. He gets as fired up and as pissed as anybody out there. It's just the nature of the game. And you can see the body language. You know, you can see. My big thing as a caddy is, I'm not going to mention any names because some of them are my friends and some of what you would call the greatest caddies of all time, or they've actually worked for the greatest players of all time, but we call them bad body language guys. You know what I mean? Because when things ain't going good, the shoulders are slumped, the head's up. And I always was taught that, hey, no matter what happens, you cannot have the same two guys on the same team bent, right? It's okay for him to be bent, but you got to get in there within 30 seconds of a disaster and let him know you are fucking so-and-so. There's nothing going to stop you or hold you back. You're going to put the next one in the fairway, and we're just going to treat this like we do every single tournament. And you just put your head down because, Matt, you know it's golf, right? It's so weird, man. Golf's so weird.
In both directions at any time.
Yes, I shouldn't have ate the pasta last night. It was bad luck, or this or that. Why didn't I go to the same restaurant when I shot 66? I'm like, what have I screwed myself? But it's just, you watch the body language, and they're just human beings. Like, they're the best golfers in the world, but they're human beings. And the way that they deal with adversity is, you know, I've said it before in a previous episode, you get paired with some guys and you're like, man, this guy's so good, but how he has cost himself $15 million in the last 10 years. So, you know, that just goes with the territory, right? You're never going to be perfect on every shot. Yeah.
Well,
and these guys,
Scottie and Caddy, I mean, they on Saturday at the end of the round, you could
Yeah.
see Scottie get really pissed off. But I do think
he gets pissed.
and I do want to know from you, from inside scoop, right, that when it comes to Scottie and Teddy, are they that perfect? Like, I know their personalities match, but are they that perfect match that everybody's kind of saying? Like, I don't know, because I see Scottie and I don't see somebody who is, let's say, the Jordan Spieth Moxie of 2015, or even 14 when he won John Deere and so forth. Like, leading up to that, like, there's certain guys that have that moxie, that kind of clutch ability, and their caddies go hand in hand with them. I look at them as their front runners who do a really good job, and Scotty's on an absolute tear. But I don't know if he's that clutch, like, and maybe he's just not there yet, right? To where he hasn't been in that position all that often. I mean, he just broke through this year at the Waste Management Open, and then at the Masters, you saw the 4-putt on 18, then on 18 this year. I mean, he did hit a great shot into there and gave himself an opportunity to go into a playoff.
Sure he did.
But his putt wasn't nearly as close as Zalatoris.
Because he cuts it a little bit, you know. So that front right flag was probably Yahtzee for him, and he tugged it a little bit. I'll tell you, obviously he's playing the best golf of his life right now, and he has been heralded as being a superstar since. Man, did you know he might have been leading the U.S. Open at Oakmont in 2016 when he was still a teenager after the morning wave, I want to say. So he's been there. But for me, I mean, man, as you get older as a caddy, is the word jealousy when you see another caddy get hot or something like that, and you're like, but no better than me. But, you know, Teddy's such a nice guy, you know, and he's had, you know, he did his struggle years and that kind of stuff before Bubba. You know, he was just like me. He was just an average caddy working for an average player. And now, you know, things got good. But for me personally, there's a little bit more to it, because I'm really good friends with Scottie's old caddy, Scott McGinnis, who also works for Mito Pereira. And he was on his bag at Southern Hills, you know, and nobody knows that Scott McGinnis is one of the best caddies in the world. And Scottie McGinnis is one of the best greens readers in the world. And Scottie Scheffler was not as easygoing in his first 3 or, you know, 4 years on tour. And there would be some tension there. And I just know how hard Scott McGinnis worked. I mean, the guy made, you know, $14-15 million in a few years without winning a golf tournament. And Scottie started with him on the Corn Ferry Tour. So when they split, and then all of a sudden Teddy steps in, you know, and I will tell you what, we played great at Sea Island this year and finished 9th. And we were paired with Scottie like on Saturday or Sunday, and they were still in their feeling out period, Ted and Scott. And Scottie didn't play any good. He shot 40th, or he played, you know, placed 40th or 50th or something like that. So part of me is a little bummed for Scott McGinnis, because I thought at Southern Hills, I told Scott McGinnis every day when they're in the mix, I go, this is how it's supposed to be. You're going to win the PGA, because the social media will fucking shell a caddy like, oh, you went to a better caddy and that kind of stuff. And it's like, hey, shut the fuck up. You've never worked with this guy, and you never worked with this guy. You flip a coin. You can't separate who the better caddy is. It's just sometimes you step in, and it took me a long time to realize this, but when players fire a caddy, and I fired players and I've been fired before, you know, sometimes both guys need a change of face, or a different guy to talk to, or a different voice to listen to, or different stories, or this and that. And sometimes that'll push a guy over the edge and get him fresh. And obviously
happens in other sports too, right? I mean, you look at Major League Baseball, you look at the NBA. I mean, you all of a sudden bring in a new manager. Think of the freaking Warriors with Mark Jackson, and then all of a sudden Steve Kerr comes in the next year and wins the championship that year. Mark Jackson was jaded. That hurts. And like, you think about it, somebody who is the caddy on the Corn Ferry, then all of a sudden you're gaining some success on the PGA Tour, and right before you have that big breakthrough moment, they switch caddies. Like, that's gotta be just absolutely devastating.
So the story on the breakup with Scott McGinnis and Scottie Scheffler is, you know, I consider Sungjae in my time with him, he's the hardest bag on the tour, because he just ramrods you, right? Well, apparently Scottie might be a little bit like that, but he's more low key. He doesn't show it as much as the guy with Sungjae would show it. But I guess they were, you know, he had all been all over Scottie for about a year. But it's probably the pressure that he's making $3 or $4 million a year, and he hadn't popped yet. So they got to the CJ Cup in Vegas this year. And Scottie McGinnis was getting some serious anxiety about, and I can relate to this feeling about going to work in the morning, about what's he going to beat me up about today.
Oh, wow.
So I guess they played the first day maybe at CJ Cup and played okay, but he got the shit kicked out of him. And then, man, I hope Scottie doesn't listen to this. But if he does, sorry, Scott, you're the #1 player in the world.
Sorry, Scottie.
Get used to it. So I guess on Friday, Scottie thought he was having a heart attack when he got to the golf course, because he was just not in great shape. Scottie McGinnis, we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it got to such a point where he told Scottie Scheffler, he's like, man, I don't feel good. I need to see a paramedic. So the paramedics came over and he's like, man, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. They're like, bro, take a deep breath. This is anxiety and that kind of stuff. So they finished that week. And, 2 or 3 days later, he was no longer employed with Scottie Scheffler. So I don't know, it just, man, relationships don't last that long out here. If you're Dustin Johnson and you're Austin Johnson, it's your brother, right? You're never going to fire your brother. Fill in I just look at it this way. Phil and Bones split. Steve Williams could be the greatest caddy of all time. He got fired from the greatest player of all time. It just doesn't. I've always said, if you make it 2 years with the guy, it's actually pretty good. So my heart goes out to Scottie McGinnis, but rest assured, he is going to be just fine, because this Mito Pereira is going to win a lot of golf tournaments. He is the real deal. And Latino golf, young Latino golf in general, man, come on. Yeah. I mean, man, you got these guys, and the Latinos, they're fucking not afraid. They go. That's that new breed. They go to everything. Fucking Sebastian Munoz, you watch this guy. I don't care if he's got 238 and it's 4 from the back and 4 over the corner. He's fucking slinging 4-iron right at this thing. And that's how he shoots 60, 61 or 62. And it'll backfire on you sometimes, but these guys just know when they get it going for 3 or 4 weeks. Carlos Ortiz. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And
a lot of guys, Joaquin Neiman. And he's been up there constantly. I just wonder how long. I just wonder how long he can manage that
with the back. Yeah, with the back. Well, these guys, it's 2022. These guys have trainers. They're in the gym all the time.
Yeah, but we said the same thing about DeChambeau. And then all of a sudden you see, like, your body's gonna break at some point.
Yeah, but he's not as limber. He's built different than Joaquin's a string bean and that kind of stuff. And super mobile. Hey, they said it about DJ forever, right, too. You know what I mean? How long is that transition going to last? And he started getting his shit together, getting in the gym and stuff like that. And he's beat the test of time. I mean, he's so good, he might win on the LIV Tour. Just never know.
I do want to spin one other thing, though, here real quick.
Sure.
While we're on the topic of Scottie and Teddy, is that, remember when Bubba would always be like, he would bitch at Teddy.
Yeah.
I mean, and get really pissed off, specifically at Teddy, which normally you didn't see out of PGA Tour pros. But I just have to say that with Scottie missing some of these putts, I mean, was Bubba onto something there? Was our boy Jerry kind of like, maybe Teddy isn't the best green reader in the world? I don't know. Like, I like Teddy a lot, but I mean, it does raise the question.
He's a great green reader, but I've always said this, a caddy's biggest fear out there reading greens is it's not the 25-footer pin high they have. You know what I mean? It's the 3.5, 4-footer when the guy calls him back in and you're like, and that's where I get with that little hidden boom mic, where they're like, hey, would you come take a look at this? And one caddy will look at the other and go, did he not just fucking watch that go by? Because none of us like getting called in on a 4-footer. No. Because what is a 4-footer with a little left to right break? You tell me. Is it outside the edge? Are you dripping it in? Is it half and half? Are you charging this? Are you charging this thing? So Teddy knows what he's doing. He's a good player in his own right. He's a great greens reader. But I have always thought myself personally that the best, and Scottie is one of the best putters. So this is going to buck what I'm going to say. But the best putters really don't call their caddies in very much. How many times have you seen Phil when he was rolling call Bones in? Fucking very rarely. How many times do you see Tiger Woods call?
Never.
Stevie in? Very rarely. How many times do you see Scottie, Adam Scott, who has been a questionable putter, but you don't win that many tournaments with not being a good putter, call his guys in and that kind of stuff. I just don't think the best putters do something like that. I will tell you that one of the best putters out here is Denny McCarthy, but his caddy is also a wonderful player and a wonderful putter himself. So they talk about every single putt. But
he had a great Open.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. But remember we were talking about average players seem to pop up in because it's not just you. Obviously, you couldn't overpower this golf course too much, you know, with all the shit around all the fairways and that kind of stuff. So guys that look at David Lingmarth dinking it around there in the middle of the fairways, and I'm good friends with his caddy. He
Brian
made
Harmon.
You know, yeah, Brian, and who is I always kid him because he's my third favorite golfer in the world, because he is not your 6'4" Kentucky bred stallion that hammers at 320. He just goes out there, the little man, and he golfs it. He gets so pissed. He gets so pissed. It's so entertaining to watch him. And he can't have one person move around the greens. He's backing off and shit. And we got paired with him somewhere, and I go, dude, you're my fucking third favorite golfer. And he thought that was great. I go, I just love watching these guys like that play golf. You know, Russell, my second, obviously my favorite is Troy Merritt. My second favorite is Russell Henley, because I love watching Russell Henley play golf, because he's got that fucking tunnel vision stuff, and you knew he was an all-state basketball player, and he's got that whatever it is when he starts rolling. So no shit on Teddy for anything like that. You're not gonna make every putt, but that's the nature of the PGA Tour superstar, right? When there's a 6-footer and that thing doesn't snap and you've hit it a cup and it only breaks a ball, of course they're gonna shine the look right to the big man, and that's what we get paid big money for, right? We are professional. We are professional shit takers is what we do. You know what I mean? And you don't.
I just hate when it's televised, which I'm so glad that Jerry and Teddy are no longer, because you don't see that dynamic anymore.
This week at Hartford on 16 was the famous par 3 where he really laid into Teddy on national television and got that rep. But we've all known that's always been Bubba. Listen, here's the deal. It took me a long time to figure out, but you actually want to get the blame, because you don't want them to walk to the next tee going, God, I'm so bad. How do I do that? You don't want them to kill their own inner confidence, so to speak. So fire at me. Alligator skin. Fred Couples used to always tell me, he goes, Bobby, if you don't have alligator skin out here, you're in the wrong business, because we are professional shit takers. And that same guy who is belittling you, calling you every name in the book, 8 minutes later, you can guarantee he is fucking calling you back in, and you better tell me right now, is this an 8 or is this a 7? Do I want to be above this hole? What's the best side to hit a putt and that kind of stuff? So you got to you let it go, and you don't think about it until that night, because those same guys that belittle you like that, as soon as the round's over, you know, you're joking about something else. You know, it's just it's part of the job. So all
what's great about taking it on, right? Of you taking it on. You embrace it. But you also remove the doubt that they made a mistake.
Yes.
And then they can go to the next hole. Level. Yes, absolutely.
It's big at this level. And almost as you get a little more experience as a caddy, the challenge becomes better than any drug in the world, right? The challenge becomes a rush. Like, oh, you really said that to me? You watch this club that we're going to fucking pull, or you watch this shot, or you watch what I'm going to have to say to you on the next one. Because you know, man, you're not sitting on the dugout with 8 other guys. You don't have a bullpen back there. You don't got a backup QB. There's no DB to replace this DB. It's just you and him, you and him, you and him. And you know, the gelling thing, and be able to take that is it's pretty cool. Honestly.
That is cool.
It's pretty cool.
It's a dynamic you don't get in any other sport.
Yeah. Like I said, I wish they mic'd us caddies up.
That would be fantastic.
Because you'd hear so much shit talking. You'd hear so much shit talking about your old man. But then 8 minutes later, you're like, man, you're the best player I ever worked for. But you know,
that could be troubling too.
Yeah, that could be troubling. That could be troubling. Yeah, unfortunately, they don't really fine us much, but they like to drop letters in the players' lockers and that kind of stuff, and say, hey, you know, here's a little $5,000. Your caddy shouldn't have said that, or you shouldn't have said it. And they don't really. Well, they do, but they don't publicize it. You know, they don't really publicize
that in the suspensions. They don't publicize suspensions either.
Yeah, that's a dirty shame, but I will in my book in about 8 years. I promise you that much. So you need
absolutely. You were there through all that. So.
I am dropping down, brother. I am dropping down.
Talking about bad putters. I mean, and people who can't read putts, but getting to Will Zalatoris. But the putter was not the issue this week. I mean, yes, there was some short putts.
Didn't he? He did.
Yeah. He didn't 3-putt once. Yeah. I mean, the guy was absolutely clutch with the flat stick. He got, how do I put this? Sometimes you put a little bit too much pressure on your swing to where eventually it catches up to you. And I feel like that was this week for him. That he had all the confidence in the world, but he had a few putts in there that were Charles Barkley-esque.
it's janky. It's janky from 3 or 4 feet. You know, he's probably one of the best putters out here from 20 to 30 feet. It's not even close. You know,
you see a stroke. It's so smooth.
His putting coach / short game coach is Josh Gregory. Now, Josh Gregory was kind of famous college coach at Augusta State when they won their national championships. Patrick Reed. He went to SMU. Coach Bryce, and something happened with him in the ACAAs. I don't even know what the deal was, and he left, and he came out here and started taking players. But I will tell you, this Josh Gregory knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? And he's a big process guy, and he's really good with the stroke, and his whole life is watching videos and this and that and understanding how a player's mind works. And I will tell you from experience that I'm a huge Josh Gregory fan. I worked for Siwoo for 2 years, who was striping it around there, who couldn't make a putt. You know, and he's like, hey, bro, maybe you have Josh Gregory help me. And so I reached out to Josh, and he's like, yeah, let's spend some time together. And the first thing he did, and you notice it with Will, they've been trying to do it, and they talked about it on TV, is these guys will get out there and they'll take 2 or 3 practice strokes, and then they lock up, right? For like 2. There's all this tension. They're not free. So I noticed that Will was, you know, doing his thing, and he got right over the ball, and he pulled the trigger, right? And he pulled
Absolutely
the trigger.
Love that.
But I've seen the videos of the 3 and the 4 footers. He knows it's janky. Josh knows it's janky, but they work every single day.
He's making them. He's making them now. But what's interesting is pre-round on the broadcast, they showed him practicing 5 footers. And they had obviously the mirror out there. They had the string, and that stroke was pure. You get out there, and I've been saying this for the longest time, that this is mental. This is not a stroke issue. This is a yips issue, to where it is more mental than anything. But even with the yip, he still is making all those sharp putts. I mean, it was impressive.
You know, pressure does a lot of things to the human body. I've noticed, you know what I mean? It can make you get a little yippy. Hey, shit. Maybe it's a good thing he's not that good from 3 or 4 feet. He fucking wins 7 times or 8 times a year. It's hard to believe that. And I'm not mistaken, but he actually might have been the betting favorite, somewhere around the betting favorite rolling into the US Open, Will, after all his big major finishes, which I think is cool.
Or no, he wasn't. Like, well, this guy, he wasn't to start the week. He was at one point. He was heading into the final round. He was the favorite.
Yeah. Well, certainly he's one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 guys that are talked about before every major now because of his near misses. But I'm like, you know, part of me being the caddy and the human that I am is like, man, this guy's never won a golf tournament out here yet. You know, that's a lot. That's a big load. But I know Will pretty good. He's good friends with my oldest son, Daniel, who worked for Davis Riley, because Davis Riley and Will Zalatoris are best friends. And man, can I say something about Will Zalatoris? Sure. He's a good dude. You remember how we were kind of joshing last time about keeping up with the Johnsons and the Koepkas? You're not going to see that with him because he's down to earth. He's super nice. He was obviously raised well. He says hello to everybody. He is happy-go-lucky. And I'll say that about Scottie Scheffler with all his success too. He's always been super nice to everybody. I don't see any big time coming in him like players change, you know, like maybe a couple of the names I just mentioned and everything like that. So his time's coming, but this thing's been brewing for Fitz for a while, right? Did you know?
It has. Hang on. I do want to go back really quick to Zalatoris because with Will, you said something about him as a person, that he's just this great individual, great person, and he couldn't have shown more than in defeat. Do you know? So he went up to Fitzpatrick's parents after he had just lost and literally told them, listen, if I had to lose today, I'm glad that it was your son that beat me. Unbelievable class coming out of Will Zalatoris on that.
Yes. And
I get goosebumps by that.
Man, I do too. And I'm going to make 2 comments on that. That is phenomenal. And I'm going to make one other comment, and I hope it doesn't rub anybody the wrong way. But the greatest golfer that we've ever seen, Tiger Woods, you think he would have ever fucking done anything like that? No goddamn way. He's fucking storming off, and he's going to be bent for fucking 4 days. How did I let this guy beat me? And maybe that was the big difference with Tiger and his dominance, other than his obviously gifted talent and hard work over the years since he was just a teeny tiny kid. But that's where he was one up and on everybody.
There is something to be said though about that competitive edge. You just turn it on and you can't turn it off, like Michael Jordan. Like you
talked about that last week. It never leaves. You know, I played with MJ in some money games when I was working for Dustin at Bears Club and that kind of stuff. Fucking guy, you know, is a competitor.
He's
you know,
cutthroat.
and he's a shit talker on the golf course too. Trash talker. He'll get in your dome. Why wouldn't you get in somebody's dome when you're worth so many $1 billion? You can
Bobby,
keep
you and
all the way home.
we got to go down and play his course. The Grove.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
I wish.
We got.
Yeah,
Bobby. We're gonna get down there. Trust me. We're gonna make that happen.
Oh, I'm talking about the Johnsons and the Kepkas. I ain't allowed within a 100-mile radius of fucking Jupiter now. What are you talking about? They don't want any part of me down there. Yeah,
that's why I said the Grove.
Yeah, make some phone calls. Well, I am best buddies. I am really good buddies with Keegan, so that's our one good chance. And I was speaking to him. I was really rooting for him because he's another one through all of his success, and he is very hard on himself and expects a lot out of himself. But you know, he's another one of those guys that through his success has never changed.
He had a great week. Right? I was proud of him. It was, you know, he was so fired up there on Saturday, you know, finishing at 2 under, and it means so much to him. And it's almost like you want to pull him to the side and say, stop letting this mean so much to you, because it was obvious he was pressing, missing those, you know, bogey the first 3 holes. But he still turned in a decent round. I mean,
yeah,
he struggled. He struggled Sunday, but he kept it together enough to get to where it wasn't an embarrassing round. It was a good final round. Shot a couple over, and like he finished in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you know, it gets to those last 2 or 3 holes with those guys, and you know you can't win, and they loosen up a little bit. And they're like, man, this was, you know, I've always said it. It's sometimes at the start of the week that like you're like, man, if you'd have told me at the start of the week I was going to have a chance to win the U.S. Open and I wasn't going to play great and I was going to finish 6th or 7th, would I take it? Especially with a $17.5 million purse. Yeah, you probably take it.
Mito said that after the PGA loss. He's like, listen, starting the week, I just want to make the cut.
Yeah, and then Brooks is like, I'm not here. I don't show up to finish second. And it's like, yeah, no shit, man. You've been finishing fucking 55th for 2 years right now. It's injuries or whatever it is, whatever's changed.
Lifestyle, Bobby. I'm telling you, man, when you have to live that celebrity lifestyle, but we're on the U.S. Open recap. Let's get to Fitzpatrick and the magic of Fitzpatrick. I didn't realize he hit 17 of 18 greens. All of a sudden, they're starting to talk about it, and I'm like, wait a second. Yeah, I'm like going back through the holes because it wasn't the cleanest round ever, but they're talking about how great of a ball striking round it was. And then I started thinking, I'm like, holy cow, he's hit 17 of 18 greens.
Yeah, I was in the Caddy hospitality. I was in Caddy hospitality, you know, pretty much watching the whole coverage, waiting for a caddy buddy of mine to finish. We were driving over here to Hartford together after the round. And I remember, and I knew how many greens he hit, but I was sitting with another caddy who had just finished. And he's like, man, it really softened up out there because we got a lot of rain from like 2. I got woken up from 2 in the morning to 6 in the morning or something like that. And they come on, they go, oh, this is his 16th green. The caddy looks at me and goes, he fucking hit 16 greens already or something? I'm like, yeah, haven't you been watching? But I'll tell you another thing you don't notice about Matt Fitzpatrick is he fucking moves it, man. He moves it. Did you see that stat that him and DJ were playing together or something? And his speed was $175 and he hit it so far, and DJ's was 173, and it looked like DJ went after that one a little bit. So
he's up to 116. Yeah, I mean that's going to get you 285 carry nowadays, 290. Well, with the tour vans,
he hits it farther.
I was just about to get to that. I always forget, like the common folk, right? Once you no longer get clubs from tour vans and they're not like speccing them out for you, you lose yardage. And those guys, I mean, they're maxing those guys out with the ball flight that they want and the controllability and so forth. So he's hitting it 290 with roll that's going 320. I mean,
he hits the tumbler. That gets another 40 or 50 on the ground. So he just does everything good. We got paired with him when I was working at Sungjae, not the November Masters, but the April Masters. We missed the cut in Cantlay, and I watched him play up close for 2 days, and I'm like, man, this fucking Matt Fitzpatrick is going to knock off a big one. I remember thinking to myself halfway through the round on Friday, he's going to knock off a big one. You know, he writes notes down after every shot that he hit. He is every shot, right? And he's caddy.
I don't know how he has time, but they do wind direction. If it was soft or whether the ground was hard, like there's so much detail that goes into it, and he's cataloged this throughout since he turned professional. It's unbelievable.
Right. Well,
I could never do that.
Well, he does it to another level, but most of us caddies document that stuff on our pin sheets or in our books. You know, you are writing down the club, you're writing down the wind direction, you know exactly where it pitched, what it ran at to. And these are things that you just build up on for the conditions for the tournament and that kind of stuff. But what a great man. The USGA has to be so happy. You know, they have to be so happy. Jason Gore did an unbelievable job on the setup. You know, it was just a great experience. The caddies were man, we were treated so good. We got so much shit. We got this cool bag, hats, T-shirts.
Can we give a second to just give a round of applause for Mike Wan?
Yes.
First year as CEO.
Yeah.
I mean, he was coming in as a rock star off of the LPGA Tour. If you can do that with the LPGA Tour, it's going to be amazing to see what he can do over the years to come.
Especially coming from Mike Davis, who's very vanilla and very standardized and scripted, and there's all his answers and you never probably saw his personality. But Mike Wan, and I'm sure it's something you want to touch about, but even his, you know, they got lit up pretty good for all the commercials and everything. I believe it was on Saturday, right? And he came right out and said, he goes, "Hey guys, I'm aware. I'm going to fix it." You know, and he's a doer, right?
He said, "I'm going to talk to our partners, which is NBC, and we're going to fix this."
Right. And that just goes to show you that everything, you know, the USGA, and I made a comment last week, you know, they've been known to fuck things up on some pin positions and losing greens and that kind of stuff. But a combination of Mike Wan and Jason Gore on the setup and everybody in between, let's give it to them. They nailed it.
Well
they
done, gentlemen, because and even in the responses, I mean, you saw early on in the week that everything was dark cloud, LIV Tour. How could you let these guys be a part of the U.S. Open and everything? And I know, I mean, even in us talking off air, that like there's a divide right now. There's a clear divide between the guys that are clearly going and the guys that are not. And there's like now all of a sudden a rivalry. It's like Yankees Red Sox, and all of a sudden you have this dynamic. But Mike Wan, I mean, he's the hero out of all of this, to where when he got asked about it as to why he let those guys play in the tournament, he goes, listen, there was literally this year in February an event in Saudi Arabia in which plenty of guys took guaranteed money up front just to show up. And then the DP World Tour, that was one of their events for the year. So all of their guys went, and it's the exact same group that is funding LIV Golf Tour. And he was just brutally honest about it all. Right. And that was that breath of fresh air that we're just not getting. And they even asked, they're like, how did Jay take this? He's like, me and Jay are friends, but when we talked, like, it wasn't about this, and it wasn't about my decision. He's like, this was my decision. And he goes, it might change in the future, but I felt like at least we have that, like, it was so polarizing as to everything we've seen, that was the first like actual realistic response as to, listen, there's a lot going on here that is behind the scenes that you guys don't know about or isn't being publicized, that, you know, it's just not fair at this point in time. He did open the door to where, like, maybe next year those same guys aren't going to be allowed. So,
and go ahead.
No, just fair play on him for doing that and being honest about it.
Just another clap for him.
Yeah,
and
seriously.
The job he did. And let's give a clap to those 15 LIV players that got around there in 100 over par. Way to go, guys. Fucking good playing. Awesome.
Bobby, it's the lifestyle golf, man. It's the lifestyle golf.
T27. Nice one, DJ. T27, the big fella. You know, the big fella.
I was disappointed. I was disappointed in DJ's performance. I mean, DeChambeau is coming off of a serious injury, let's be honest. So I didn't expect anything out of him. Thanks for showing up. But then everybody else, like, that's what I've been saying this entire time. I never felt like they were at risk of damaging the PGA Tour, because it's all the guys that are riding off in the sunset, the head names that are marketable. And that's what Greg Norman is shocked by. Now, granted, we know Greg Norman's all about Greg Norman.
Yes, I agree.
Like, when you're that fit
94,
and you're going out catching fishes and posting on Instagram that are twice the size of you, and you're able to hold them, like, you love yourself some you, which is fine.
But... You know what else I noticed? How about, did you notice this? The volume went down on the LIV talk as soon as that tournament started, right? It was 4 days. You didn't really hear shit about the LIV. You were into the US Open pretty much.
Mike
I mean, there
Wan
was a little talk here and there.
Well, but that's Mike Wan. He shut down everything by having the perfect response, which literally was just the most honest response, which is, listen, this whole entire thing is blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
They're the same sponsors that sponsor the PGA Tour. And when I say that, by the way, LIV actually did some research on it, and it is 23 sponsors on the PGA Tour.
Yeah,
doing
I read
$40+ billion in business with Saudi
Tour's
Arabia.
Decision, though. Those are those businesses' decision to be involved with that.
But here's the thing, right? It's that comment you made the last time you were on, where it's like it's a money grab. Yes, it's a money grab for the players, but on the PGA Tour side, that's the money grab from the PGA Tour.
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
I want before we jump into that, let's back up a little bit, because I want us to give a little shout out to Billy. To Billy.
Oh, absolutely. Billy Foster,
who has been doing it for 40 years. And I'm going to preface this by telling you that I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a couple Ryder Cups. Okay. And I will say one thing about this. When you get over there to the Ryder Cup, you got a guy like Bones in the locker room and that kind of stuff, and he's rallying up these caddies, and he's telling you, you don't fucking talk to those European Tour caddies. They're not going to talk to us. This is war. Every man for himself. And some of those, and I'm going to go out and say it and probably piss a couple guys off, but some of those European Tour caddies that have been in a while are a little pompous and think that they're the best caddies in the world. And when we've been dealing with that, you're an American and that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, fuck you, because you're over here playing in our golf tournaments, and I'm not going to mention any names because some of my friends and that kind of stuff. But Billy has never been like that, because I've asked Billy with his kind of knowledge and experience. I've asked him numerous questions over the years about certain golf holes and strategy and how to handle certain emotions on the golf course, and he's always been straight up and answered me very, very genuine. And it was a great thing for him. Now I'm not going to say that about all, because I was talking to another caddy about this last night, and we were talking about the European Tour caddies and a few that we don't like, but that's the older ones. There's a bunch of younger European Tour caddies coming into the mix now with world-class players that are totally different. You know what I mean? They're like Americans. They're chill. They're laid back. But hats off to Billy. That was a big deal. Nobody has better stories if you can ever get them. And he's like a walking comedian.
Well, I'm relying on you on that one, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I have good stories, but they're dirt stories, of course, but he's just a genuine.
Well, Bobby, we got to get him on at some point.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm that close with him, but I will tell you that I am, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag for our listeners next week, but there's an outside chance that somebody caddy that had a really big chance to win or to force it into a playoff on 18 is going to come join us and tell us about his young player and everything that's expected out of him, and maybe talk a little bit about his putting stroke and what they're doing to get that better. So we'll just leave it at that. So
what I think a teaser. I love it.
I know. Well, I think over the next few times that we meet, I'm going to, we're going to have some guys in here that the golf junkies are really going to love to hear what I'm
calling this the season of the caddies. Let's put it that way. It's the season of the caddies. I think it's just a perfect way to bring people in, because what's the voice that you never hear from other than when somebody writes a tell-all book? Like Stevie Williams, right?
Yes.
You don't hear from the caddies ever. Yeah. Like, they're not interviewed. They're not brought into the fold on this type of stuff. They don't have a voice.
Right.
I want to get the voice of the caddies. I want the caddies to all of a sudden start spilling a little bit of the beans from the inside scoop. And I've caddied, not professionally. I've had friends that have caddied. You and I are friends to where now it's like I get those stories from you, and I'm just like, man, these need to be heard, because people love getting inside the ropes, hearing the real details, getting the real life stories. They don't want this fairy tale fantasy that is portrayed to the audience, right? Like, let's get underneath the covers here and figure this stuff out.
Now that I'm an official co-host, I'm going to throw some shit out right now. You ready for this? Here's a name for you. Abe Answer, gone.
Really?
Abe Answer, gone. Live. You want to know what the other rumbles are going around? I'm going to say it now that I'm a co-host. Hideki is thinking about it.
He should.
Hideki's name has been coming up. Patrick Cantlay's name has been coming up. We all know Kokrak's going. It's just a matter of time.
Yep.
I don't know these guys, if these guys are going to drop the bomb. The Abe Answer stuff started hitting yesterday at social media. And it's funny, I was walking. Tell you how good being a caddy is half being an actor and a side coach. I'll tell you how good some of these caddies are at acting. I walked 9 holes with Benji Thompson, who is Abe Answer's caddy, and we were walking 9 holes, and we were talking about the LIV, and I was, part of me thinks they're a little bit of traders. That's just my own opinion.
No,
yeah,
that's fair.
You're getting
you
that
absolutely
vibe on the
can.
range, man. Nobody's making eye contact with these guys. They're traders, and you hear guys walk by, and you hear a player or a caddy comment, "Fucking traders."
Of course, there's going to be some resentment there, no matter what, from the players that turned down deals because they knew that it was life-changing. But at the same time, they're sitting there going, no, morally, I'm sitting on this side of the fence, and I believe in the PGA Tour, and there is something to be said. And you and I talked about this on the last episode that we were on, that I want to be in the middle so badly. It's just how the PGA Tour has played it, to where, like, I want the best of both worlds, because I want the PGA Tour, because to me, that's never going anywhere. Like, that is the tour.
Never going
Everything
anywhere.
else
Never
is more lifestyle, more entertainment. And what's actually funny is I went back to the very first episode of the Pull Hook Golf podcast, in which the LIV Golf Tour was up, and I did a PSA, and I even said, I was like, outside of trying to get me and Mikey on that tour to go play it, was literally the fact that this was, in my opinion, an entertainment tour. It was a lifestyle / entertainment tour, just to bring people's interest into the game. I never thought in a million years that this was a risk to the PGA Tour, but I can see how, for yourself, for the players on the PGA Tour, that it's like, wow, you like, especially with the line drawn in the sand, it's like you're a trader. You technically are.
That's the vibe. That's the vibe. Kepka's going too, by the way. Yeah. I would bet everything on it that it's just a matter of time.
That was one of the names that I know.
We talked about it last week a little bit. The vibe you got from is Mr. Tough Guy. You're probably, you're a great golfer and that kind of stuff, but pretty sure you're
no, but Bobby, I've actually heard his name through multiple people, and normally when multiple sources come through, it's like, and it is, because now all of a sudden you can, if him and DJ have this friendly rivalry, right? To where they used to be boys, now they're not. They hate each other now, but it's more so that Brooks really can't stand DJ for some reason. Don't quite understand it, but it is what it is.
There might be something there, that we don't, with DJ, it's always a question mark, really, isn't it? There's might be something there that you don't really know about, that you might have heard about, but you don't know about it. But
I've heard a few things as to why it is what it is, but I can't believe everything I hear on it.
Well, you can't. I mean, the gossip runs rampant on the driving range and on the PGA Tour, and God forbid you get a handful of caddies involved and that kind of stuff. And there used to be a joke out there. There's 3 forms of communication on the PGA Tour: telephone, tell a tour wife, or tell a caddy. And that's the 3 forms of communication. Shit's gonna get out. It's not until you get a little bit older as a caddy that you realize you're like, I probably fucking shouldn't have said that, but I did. So I'm gonna roll with it. So we'll see. I don't think we're gonna hear much in the next 2 or 3 days. You got Pumpkin Ridge coming up, I believe, the week after next. And honestly, you've been there, I've been there before. Let me tell you something. Who knows? Are they going to get any people? Number one, it's in Portland, but it's not in Portland. It's way out in the sticks where they grow weed. It's like in between cannabis farms. It's the most beautiful ride when I was there ever. You smell all these weed farms growing and everything. And you're like, man, are there electric fences? Can we just jump over the fence and pick our own? Are we going to get shot or whatever? But it's not a real big spectator viewing golf course and that kind of stuff. It's not the greatest. It's a good facility. They're wonderful. It's wonderful, awesome golf course. I said this last week, but who knows how that's going to go. But, obviously there'll be some names dropping out. I'm sure I'll hear some more scoop on the driving range. We're in Hartford this week.
And we're here for it.
Yeah, and you're here for it. So we're looking forward to Hartford this week. It's another great golf course that everybody loves. Hartford is unique because it's one of those golf courses I've always told people, it's like, man, with that drivable hole on 15, and, you can literally be on the 13th tee, this par 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, par 5, and you could be 5 or 6 out of the lead. And I experienced this in 2014, I want to say, with Brendan Steele, where all of a sudden we're like, start the day at T24 and he starts going Yahtzee, and you can make up, you could be 5 back with 5 to go, and you're like, fuck, we got a chance. We knock one on 15 and make it 2 or something like that. 16's a hard hole, 17's a bitch, 18's okay, but there's been it's had some flair for dramatics. So, they're all majors to me now, right, man? $8-10 million purses. They're all majors, man. They're just all majors. So we're looking forward to this week.
I'm pumped for it. I
Yeah,
love the Northeast golf tournaments.
yeah, come on,
You
these are
get
the
the old
best.
school feels. I
Yeah.
mean, you get the tree line. You got some dog legs
Yes.
in there at TBC Hartford, and it's just like it gets
Yes.
fun out there.
Man, I've always said, you go to, Long Island, you get out there to Shinnecock and National and all those sick old golf courses, and Jersey with Richwood and Paramus. And it's just, for a guy that grows up in California, obviously there's Pebble Beach and there's Riviera and there's plenty of Alistair McKenzie tracks all the way up the coast in Northern California that people don't know about and stuff like that. But and you start moving over to here, and this is kind of your stomping grounds, right?
It is. I mean,
there's the best. Here's the best golf courses. Here's the best golf courses
I always
in the
said,
world, man.
Between Long Island to Westchester, New York, to the eastern part of New Jersey, and then even up into Connecticut, you've got some of the. It's a golf mecca. It is literally a golf mecca of all of these great old architects that spent so much time. I mean, rest his heart, Pete Dye even has golf course up there that we talked about on the one episode where we were joking around about Pound Ridge and when was the last time you went to Pound Ridge? Yeah. And it's just like, but at the same time, there are some great tracks and people don't realize, but a lot of it is because they're private. And that's
they're private and they've been here for 100 years, right? And they've never really got stepped on before. And that's not even talking about like I wouldn't say munis because they are mostly private, but there's the private level that's up here, so to speak, and then there's the mid-level and this kind of level club. But there's tons of those out there too that these golf courses you're like, 100 years old, you're like, man, this golf course has never been touched in 100 years, never had to be touched in 100 years. You don't have to bring the US Open doctors to all of these courses. They just, they've been there forever. So it's super exciting.
You don't need Gil Hanse to show up and
it's almost like
a squad.
To me, it's almost like a privilege when you stand like, behind you or on these golf courses. You're like, man, how and I always said this about Pebble because I've had so much luck and so much love there and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, how many people don't get the chance to experience standing where I'm standing on this tee or on this green or in the middle of this fairway where all these things, epic things in golf have happened. So, man, sometimes I pinch myself because you feel so, it's luck. You feel so fortunate, but you're like, man, if I wouldn't have met this guy or I wouldn't have met this guy or this guy wouldn't have picked up the phone, I would never be here or something like that. So
sometimes you got to pinch yourself because, think about how many people would trade places
I never would have
with
met you.
I know.
I never would have met you.
And I wouldn't have met you.
Yeah, exactly. Match made in heaven. Right? So, so we got Hartford this next week. The tour goes to John Deere the following week, which everybody I know that's everybody thinks that, right? But once you get to that golf course, you're like, man, this is another badass golf course. It's in Moline, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's always in sick, epic shape. It's not the John Deere field that it used to be. I don't know.
Well, it's because it's stacked up against the Open Championship.
Right? Yeah, so we got
that's a tough one.
Yeah, and then we got my guy. So I'm here this week in Hartford, looking for a great week after what I saw out of him on Friday. I get to go home next week. My guy has got a sponsor's exemption into the Irish Open, asked me if I wanted to go. I said no, because I want to go home. No, I'm not going to go because I have to go the next week to the Scottish Open. And, I have little boys at home. It's so funny that people that are listening, that kind of stuff, they're like, oh my God, you caddy for so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. You're hanging around with all these guys with the greatest job. Well, yeah, it is a great job. But when you start moving 3 or 4 weeks on the road, and you haven't seen your wife, and you haven't seen your kids, and your kid's a goalie, and he stopped the PK, It's all these little things that people don't think about that wear on you. And let's call a spade a spade. I get on the road for 2 or 3 weeks, and all of a sudden my wife's not feeling good, and I'm speaking for everybody out there, and you're deflecting shit from home for a couple nights, and all of a sudden, you're catching shit on a Thursday night when you're in contention, and you're like, you hang up the phone, you're like, why did she have to say that to me? You know what I mean? I got to be fucking focused for Friday. It's almost a selfish attitude, but it's not. It's all not fucking cupcakes and Silver Oak, man.
It's not made for everybody because that road schedule, which again kind of goes to the fact that it's like, the PGA Tour kind of has a schedule that it never feels like it really ends. But luckily, it never really. You're with somebody who.
For you.
Oh, here we go.
Scoop.
I'm in.
You want to hear what's going to be maybe announced tomorrow? Hope the PGA Tour brass ain't listening to this. So supposedly we have our fall schedule. Listen to this. Supposedly there are three $25 million tournaments coming out in the fall on the PGA Tour for the top 60 in the world. Take that, Greg. Take that, Greg. So that is the rumor around the campfire. That's the hot one that I'm starting to hear, that maybe even tomorrow, you heard it, folks, three $25 million tournaments for the top 60 in the world, which I'm fucking pissed at because we're like 100 in the world. And I hope 41 guys go to LIV and decide to come back in 2 years so we can get into these $25 million tournaments. But, obviously the PGA Tour brass is a moving and a shaking, and they are not going to be pushed around by nobody loves it more than Greg Norman.
But that's the change that I am so excited about.
Yes.
Is to see what the reaction ends up being. Because the tour hasn't changed that much.
Well, don't you think this LIV thing could end up being really good for the PGA Tour in the long run?
It's going to be great for the PGA Tour in the long run because it pushes them. They had a monopoly, and now all of a sudden they've got this player to where it has endless amounts of money, and they have to be better, and they have to think outside of the box in order to how can we not necessarily compete with them just from a monetary standpoint, but obviously that's where you got to start, right? You got to all of a sudden have this fall season be this huge thing where you got a ton of big time purses. I mean, that's a lot of money, $25 million.
And you remember how I mentioned last week, let them all go, because the college, I follow college so much. I'm like, let them all go, because there are so many major winners that are coming out of college. And I don't know if you paid attention to it, but last week was like the first week that all those 15 big time college players came out. And if you watched what happened, on the Canadian tour and the Corn Ferry tour and out here, you had a few of those young guys, those college guys made the cut at the US Open. You had Pearson Coody, who my son works for, finished 4th in Wichita. He was the #1 ranked golfer. You had a kid named Aman Gupta from Oklahoma State, I believe, who was in the mix. You had Pearson Coody's twin brother, Parker Coody, played good on the Canadian tour. You had 2 of the Pepperdine guys, Joey Vierzic, and I think one of them missed a cut, and Joey Highsmith played good. So it's funny, I know all these names because you're like, oh, here we go. Here's the new influx, which is super exciting for a guy like me. And with the US Open going, there was another big story that happened in Wichita with Norman. So remember I had mentioned to you, I had been to Pumpkin Ridge with a young man out of Oregon that Callaway paid a boatload of money, Norman John. He lost his game for 3 years. I caddied for him for like 45 days. Like his agent called me and Callaway called me, and they're like, hey, we need, if you don't have anything to do, something's not right with this guy, come on in and give us a scouting report. So he kind of lost his game for 2 or 3 years. He got a boatload. He turned pro when he was sophomore year of Oregon, just whooped up on everybody, destroyed everybody, got a boatload of money for Callaway. And after 2 or 3 years, they're like, oh my God, did we pay all this try on money to this guy? And he Monday qualified last week, and he won by 5 on the Corn Ferry Tour. Norman John set a record 26 under par or something like that. And it's funny, I was telling the Callaway guys, when they would call me in after I'd worked for them for a week and that kind of stuff, they're like, what do you think? And I'm like, something's broken. Number one, something's broken. But I can tell you what, and I've gone on record saying it, I go, he will play a 6 to an 8 hole stretch like he is the second coming of, and I use Dustin as an example. He overpowers golf courses. He had a great attitude, but he had a huge miss with the driver, man. And I'm talking about a 80-yard fucking block right that's going right of the world, and he went to a teacher named Chris Mason, who's based out of San Diego, who's been working with Brendan Steele and KH Lee, and you saw KH Lee just won, and they got something figured out because he just steamrolled everybody.
I mean, winning by 5 after you Monday qualify?
He had a 7-shot lead in that drive I'm telling you about, showed up on number 18. He hit one out of bounds, which is okay to do when you got a 7-shot lead.
It's like the 4-putt at the Masters by Scottie.
But that's what I'm telling you. This kid is 23 years old, and he just throttled a Corn Ferry Tour field, which only a lot of us know that the Corn Ferry Tour talent-wise is the second best tour.
It's stupid.
No. Yeah, it's just so much talent.
I mean, what did you say the one episode you said? C-stick, hit stick.
C-stick, hit stick.
Those kids, that's the only thing they know.
no scar tissue from those guys, right? There's no scar tissues from these young kids. So I was tracking these 11, 12, 13 kids that just played in professional events for the first time other than amateur stuff and that kind of stuff. And I think 2 of them missed cuts on their respective tours. So PGA Tour is just fine, folks. There are tons of major winners coming out of college this year. This year coming out of college is loaded with absolute talent, and it's just going to continue and continue. And that's something that the LIV Tour can't deal with, because our university system and our golf here, hey, all you have to do is look at North Texas or all these big time schools. Half these kids aren't even American anymore. They're coming from other countries, and these coaches are finding them, and they have scouts out there, and it is big fucking business now to bring these foreign players over here and get their education through our university system and get their careers going. So PGA Tour is going to be,
it's going to be just
sorry,
fine.
Greg.
I mean,
it's going to be just fine.
And but I don't think that it hurts Greg in any way. Like that's a thing.
Maybe
though.
Greg
it's
went
like,
in it for a cash grab.
Well,
maybe Greg's getting paid so much, and he tried to pull the shit in he tried to pull the shit in 1994 and get the breakaway tour, and I think even Seve was behind him there for a little bit. So
he's always wanted to fight back against the PGA, right? Yeah. He's always had that feel about it that it's like he I don't know if he ever felt like he received the recognition that he felt like he deserved for how good of a player he was.
Yeah, well, if he wins that one Masters, it's probably going to be different, because honestly, I mean, as much shit talking as I'm doing about him and everything like that, he was, when he got on a roll, he was, I remember watching him when I was young, and I'm like, man, this guy just looks unbeatable. I'll share another little small Greg Norman story with you. So just going back to my childhood, I have 4 little brothers, and our dad passed away of melanoma at a very young age. And we had 2 uncles. My mom had 2 cousins, Gary and Ralph Bazance. And they kind of turned into our dads and that kind of stuff. Well, my uncle Gary Bazance was a business genius, and he is also the genius behind Cobra Golf Clubs. He ran Cobra Golf Clubs. Tom Crow was the club maker, and my uncle Gary did all the books and that kind of stuff. And everybody made hundreds of millions of dollars. But I will tell you that I'm scarred from Greg Norman for this reason alone, is because my uncle told me at Christmas one night, after a couple of cocktails, of course, that's when the real truth serum comes out. He signed Greg Norman to that enormous contract where he gave him probably, I'm guessing about a quarter of Cobra Golf Clubs, and it was absolutely killing it. And he told me, he goes, it was the biggest fucking business mistake I ever made in my life, because he was not the personality that I wanted to deal with. And we had everything running fine, where everybody was getting rich, and we were the first ones to make oversized clubs, painted graphite shafts. We made clubs that were appealing to people. And what is the big thing in golf for your average golfer? What is the big thing when it comes to picking out clubs? Something that looks good, right? Yep. Because if it looks good behind the ball, it breeds confidence to the brain. It goes straight upstairs. Absolutely. So he told me, he kind of scarred me with Greg. And he's like, he's the biggest asshole I ever had to deal with. And I'm sorry, Greg. And I'm sorry, Uncle Gary, for saying that. But, so I was scarred with him. I was scarred with him from the start.
Well, I sure they say the same thing about Bryson nowadays. I mean,
yeah.
Cobra's had a bad stretch of tough people to work with. Ricky was easy.
Speaking of Bryson, did you know when I spent my 2 years up there caddying at Pebble Beach, I told you I caddied for that really good kind of famous amateur, Randy Hague. He was almost like a professional amateur. Well, he would partner up with a guy in these NCGA 4 balls named Daryl Donovan or John DeChambeau. And John is Bryson's dad. And I tell people, I go, I caddy for this guy, and you would not even know that Bryson was his son. You wouldn't even think they came from the same bloodlines, because John DeChambeau is your NorCal, laid back. I hit one in the shit, big deal. I'm going to chip it out, make a pot, and get out of here, and that kind of stuff. And it just surprises me that Bryson's so high strung the way he is, and that kind of stuff. And not to mention, it fucking pisses me off with that fucking dorky caddy is walking around with those high top Pumas and those socks that go to his knees. I fucking hope and shit from.
He's waiting for a flood. He's waiting for a flood. It's coming. He knows the great flood's coming.
Listen, caddies get all these little hat deals and this and that logo. What the fuck's he getting for those socks? I don't understand. He must be getting big money, because he looks like a douche out there.
Well, Bobby, you got 3 of these coming.
Yeah, I hope so.
You got a black one, a white one, and a heather gray one.
I may be 6'4", but I got that like 6 and 4/8, 3/8 dome that they don't even make at 59.50s at any ballpark. I had to go to the 950 snapback to make it fit. Sometimes I get a shower and like
these are
myself, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just kidding. So, folks, I'm going to tell you what we got. Season 2, we'll call it the Caddy season. It's going to It's going to blow your mind. You think I got stories. You're going to hear stories from other caddy friends of mine and that kind of stuff. Have been doing it for a long time. That'll give you a little insight. Maybe not just verify what I'm saying, but they'll share some stories with you and everything like that and keep you super entertained. Because if you ever want the scoop on what happens at a PGA Tour event, you don't ask a player, folks.
No.
You ask a caddy, because they will tell you how it's going down. So anyways, man, thanks for having me.
Bobby,
thanks for the new job.
Hey.
Thanks for the new job. Now, do you need my routing number and account number? For
Absolutely.
All the come
Please don't share it on air.
I'm kidding you.
People will be sending you some weird stuff into that bank account.
Any other, before we wrap it up, I got a big day tomorrow. My man's got to go play 18 holes. We're an alternate for the Pro-Am on Wednesday. He just did a little, I'll give Softco a plug, one of his sponsors. He had to do a nice little outing. That's another thing people don't know about with all these logos and everything like that. You think these guys are just getting hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. Well, actually, they're not, because they have certain days in between weeks where they fly to a certain place and they do a corporate event, and they're very sociable and that kind of stuff. So they're always working, most of these guys. So all's good, my man. Yeah. Any questions for anyone out there? All good?
Bobby, I mean, I just want to say congratulations and welcome to the show, my man. I'm so pumped to have you. This is going to be an absolute blast.
I don't drink anymore.
I know you don't, but
Smart water. Oh yeah, I'm going to give another plug to the USGA. We had with back-to-back weeks. We get smart water
with metal. I saw the aluminum.
So, can I tell you my take on the whole metal and everything?
Yes, please do.
I love it. It keeps the water so much colder in the golf bag. It's unbelievable. And I'm going to share. Well, let's go with one more story. So our amateur partner for Troy at Pebble Beach, when we tried to win this year, is actually the guy who makes all the cans for like Dasani and everything like that. He goes, and they had it at Pebble Beach, and he goes, tell me what you think about these. And I go, man, we absolutely love them, but you have got to do something about these goddamn screw top, because it takes you about fucking, you get the club and you want the water, and you want to try to put the top back on. He goes, I'm working on it. He said, I'm working on it. We got some lube or something like that. And I'm like, don't say lube. I haven't been home in 5 weeks. Let's leave it at that.
Cheers, Bobby. And welcome everybody to season 2 with Bobby Brown, my man and new co-host. Can't wait to see what this season brings, my friend.
Secret guest next week, folks. Secret guest. Matt, thanks for having me. I'll see you tomorrow. Be in touch, buddy. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more information.